This meeting is now being recorded.
Great. So as always, I've gone ahead and muted all of you, I think, just in case you forget to hit that mute button on your own phone and someone pops into your office or something else happens, you want to type up notes. You should be seeing a tree or another nature scene, and when we begin the presentations, you should see those slides. If you're having any concerns, you can click the arrow next to my name where it says CLPHA host or next to Cassie Brooks' name, and you can chat us. You can also feel free to send me an email, and I will keep an eye on my inbox in case you're having any technical difficulties. If you also are experiencing any other concerns with the webinar software, please do let Cassie or I know after it's over so that we can help you sort that out for next time. I'm very excited about the presenters today. They're both fantastic and really put together some presentations at the last minute when we had to switch topics. So today we're going to be talking about possible lease addendums related to education activities. So we'll be hearing from Ted Dezember with the King County Housing Authority, as well as Bernadette Stuart with Marin County Housing Authority. And Cassie will be interested more about that. But as always, we'll take a couple questions after each presentation and more questions at the end if we have time. If we aren't able to get to your question, we'll make sure to answer it after the webinar. To ask a question, please just click on the Q&A chat bubbles that you should see at the top rightish area of your screen. You can also type comments into the public chat section at the bottom left. I also just want to do a very quick reminder about the new schedule. You should have gotten it in an email. So if you didn't, please let Cassie or I know and we can resend it to you. But it's also available on the group's Google Drive where we put all of the presentations from the webinars and other exciting information that hopefully is helpful. In addition to the webinars, I wanted to highlight that we will now, and this is a direct result of the responses that all of you graciously filled out on the survey a few months ago. So we'll be doing update sessions every 6 months, as well as quarterly roundtables. Those formats will allow us to explore topics in a different way than we currently do with the webinars. And Cassie and I will be sending out information soon on that first one, which is set to take place, the first roundtable, which is set to take place in October. So with that, I will hand it over to Cassie.
Thanks, Sabra. This is Cassie Brooks from the Chicago Housing Authority, and I'm very happy to be here and get to help facilitate these panels today. And as Abra mentioned, we're really excited about some of the new formats outside of the webinars and the opportunity to sort of have some smaller groups and roundtables and get to discuss those initiatives a little further. So first, we're going to hear from Ted at the King County Housing Authority. So he'll be able to present a bit more on their lease addendum, and then following that, we'll take a couple questions and then switch over to Marin Housing Authority. So Ted, are you there? Ted, can you hear us? Give him just a sec. Ted? Not.
Okay. Well, we will try to figure out what's going on his end, but I'm going to go ahead and switch the presentations. And Bernadette, are you good to start then? Have we lost everyone?
Bernadette, do we have you on the line?
Okay, well, just bear with us for just a moment, folks, while we try to sort out what is going on with our presenters. Okay, thanks everyone so much for your patience. For some reason, I'm not sure why we're having some difficulties here, so Ted has indicated he can hear us, so I'm having him log off and log back on to see if that solves the problem. Ted, are you there now?
Hi, I dialed back in.
Okay, well, Ted, are you there or no?
This is Bernadette, Stuart, and Lewis Jordan. Can you hear us now? We dialed back in.
Yes, Bernadette, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Do you see your slides on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and get started with your presentation, and thank you so much to everyone for your patience.
Okay, so do I have scrolling capability?
You should.
I don't see them.
Okay, well, if you have your slides in front of you, I can go ahead and advance them for you.
Okay. All right. So this is Bernadette Stuart and Lewis Jordan with Marin Housing Authority, and we're going to touch on our school attendance program as it's related to an attachment in our Housing Authority documents. It's not a lease addendum, but it is incorporated into our CLPHA. So let's go to the next slide for background, please. So background is that Golden Gate Village is a 296-unit family housing, public housing in Marin City. And we have a local school, Bayside MLK Junior in Marin City. It's about a half a mile from our development. And 86% of the children who attend that school reside in our public housing development. So naturally, there's an interest in brokering a partnership with the school related to improving student outcomes for our children. So around 2013, the school reached out to the Housing Authority regarding the high rate of tardiness and absences. There were some other changes with the school being closed in one area and being rebuilt in another. So it caused fluctuation with attendance and enrollment. The recent relocation of schools, and then there was a high incidence of behavioral issues that they wanted to address via housing, so they reached out to us. Next slide, please. So we started having community meetings with the Sausalito Marin City School District and community stakeholders.
Because they won for this.
Oh, they did?
Through our meetings.
For this program, they want to know what.
Am I still on?
Yes, Bernadette, you are.
Okay. All right. So
everyone, sorry, just a reminder, if I haven't muted you, if you can please just go ahead and mute your phone. Thank you, Bernadette.
Okay, so through our community meetings, we developed the school attendance policy, and the objective was to improve attendance, identify issues and barriers parents have in getting their kids to school, and rewarding and recognizing perfect and improved attendance. from that policy. We tried originally to bring it to the board as a lease attachment. However, that's not something that worked out. We got a lot of pushback from the community, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And so we did enter into an MOU with the Sausalito Marin City School District and have a voluntary agreement for release of information, as well as sharing the policy with our parents. Next slide, please. So this webinar for us is going to focus on Marin Housing Authority incorporating the policy into our ACOP. And the purpose is to support local public school programs by improving community involvement. The scope of the policy is basically to the extent that the program is relevant to our self-sufficiency program, the community service and self-sufficiency requirement, the school attendance programs that already exist, such as the School Attendance Review Team and the School Attendance Review Board here in California, and to help facilitate the children's education without leading to judicially based truancy mediation or a court-based system. So the policy is basically to support the enforcement of school-based intervention and prevention methods. Next slide, please. An overview of the ACOP is that we have 7 procedures in our ACOP, and the first one is that we give notice to the residents at least once a year. At the beginning of the school year, we disseminate information regarding the importance of school attendance and make sure that parents are aware of the procedures for the local school in terms of attendance laws and the school attendance review team. Next slide, please. So participation in the program is voluntary. Okay, so there's 3 sections. We have voluntary, mandatory, and willful failure. There's a typo there. Willful failure to ensure school attendance. So the voluntary participation is that the parents are encouraged and rewarded through initiatives to participate in the school attendance program, and they can sign a release of information. The parents whose children are gamed through the school to be truant once in a school year are required to participate in mandatory school attendance remediation. So the housing authority actually joins with the school because the child has exceeded the number of tardies or absences that result in mandatory case management meetings with the school counselor, principal, and teachers. And then the last one is the willful failure to ensure school attendance. So in the event that the parent fails to ensure that their kid goes to school as required by law, the housing authority may seek to terminate housing under Section 6 of our lease. And I'll cover that in our procedures number 6, which is termination of housing. Next slide, please. So the school notifies us if the resident is late or at risk of becoming truant. So we're in California here. We're not school officials, but there are a certain number of days when the child becomes truant. Next slide, please. The fourth one is that the housing authority will get a referral notice from the school and give a written warning to the parent or guardian. And the purpose of the warning is really to do outreach to the family to offer resources to assist the parent or guardian with services that they might need. It could be transportation. It could be transportation, or it could be substance abuse services. It could be child care. It could be work-related. Sometimes there are issues in the household that lead the child to become truant, and it's just really an opportunity for us to do outreach to that family. Next slide, please. So then we have the school intervention meeting. We meet with the school and local community connectors to provide a wraparound services to the parent and children. Next slide, please. And number 6, termination of housing. This is in the procedures. However, federal law prohibits the lease requirements unrelated to housing. However, in the event that there are multiple referrals that have been received and there is a willful failure to ensure school attendance in violation of applicable laws as is in our lease, then the housing authority may issue a termination notice. It's not our intent to terminate housing to our families. It really is the intent for us to go through a grievance procedure and get the family's attention to come in, because this is actually after everything preceding this procedure has failed. So it's like a last resort to really get them inside of a meeting space to see what's going on. And finally, the next slide, please. So reasonable accommodation is incorporated if a disability prevents any household from participating in the program. We always want to discuss any reasonable accommodations to allow the household to participate fully in all of our programs. So we'll move, next slide please. The goals of the program overall is to reduce chronic student tardies, to reduce the number of unexcused absences, and reduce the number of students being referred to the SART and the SARB. Next slide. Our goals, our objectives for this program this year are stated here. We actually have a grant from Marin County Probation Department under the Truancy Prevention Initiative, and these are some of the objectives for this school year. To reduce the number of unexcused absences among students. About 80% of our students referred through the SART or SARB system will utilize a parent coordinator, the student support van, or as measured by sign-off sheets. Now this one's directly related to our latest outreach strategies to increase parental involvement, in which we recruited through 3 parent chaperones to implement that national model of the walking school bus. So the beginning of this year, we actually put signage up in our Golden Gate Village housing development with their yellow school signs that are custom made and placed on poles in our 3 designated areas, where every morning at 7:30 in the morning, a parent chaperone is there at that location to meet and escort children in the neighborhood to their local school. So that's how they measure, is by signing up which children are walking to school with them. Another objective is to increase the average daily attendance, reduce the number of kids referred to the SART and the SARB, and finally there is a direct link between children making it to school on time for breakfast, sitting with parents, teachers, and other principals and school staff to begin their day and reduce the number of tardies and absences. So those are our objectives for this school year, 2015-2016. Next slide, please. So the 3 strategies that we have for this program are to increase parental involvement, and like I mentioned, that would be through recruiting the parent coordinators, implementing the walking school bus, provide parent training and support. We have a parent connector who's part of our program, who reaches out to the parents once a week and checks in with them and asks them how things are going, and provide incentives to parents and students. The second strategy is to improve and align incentives. So here the parent coordinators are the ones who help promote and provide school-based incentives for attendance. They helped us coordinate the back-to-school rally, which was a huge success in Marin City. There were parents who got up in the gazebo and talked and did a march from our Golden Gate Village development over to a new park, Rocky Graham Park, and it was well attended, and there were lots of kids and lots of parents. So it was really more or less the goal was to create sort of a sustainability model by parents taking the initiative and leading the rally. And the third strategy is community intervention, parent-to-parent outreach, dispatching a student support van that we have through Performing Stars of Marin, and parent support intervention such as counseling support and parenting support group training. So those are our strategies to help us create a sustainable program in the community. And I think that's it. So if you have any questions, or Louis Jordan is here if he wants to chime in.
Well, you know, I just wanted to say that this whole effort is really based on the Housing Authority being extremely intentional about outcomes that we want. You know, about 3 years ago when we kicked this process off, it was met with different feelings from residents and the community. You know, folks were saying, what does housing have to do with education, which, you know, we're still trying to figure out how someone couldn't see the connection. But the community involvement, parental involvement, and the Housing Authority being extremely intentional in helping to create an environment where education is at the forefront.
Thank you both so much. And for those who are on the call, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the public chat so that we can learn more about the program. I have a question to sort of start off. You mentioned that it was a 3-year process, and it seems like parents and the community are a really key part of it. When did this program or initiative go from being, you know, a communication between the Housing Authority and the schools, and when did the community start becoming more involved and aware of this process? I understand there's with something like this, there's obviously kind of a rollout, but at what point were they involved, and how did they start, or how did you start that engagement?
From the very beginning, actually. Bernadette has taken the lead on this from the start. But when we developed the attendance policy itself, we brought in community stakeholders. I remember asking people what they thought and what should we do, and there was a lot of, you know, not a lot of uncertainty. So we put something together ourselves. We presented it to this community working group, if you will. There were some liked it, some hated it, and I ceremoniously stood in front of the group and ripped it up and said, now let's put something together. And so the policy that we speak of was a byproduct of school, health and human services, Housing Authority, law enforcement, after-school programs. So from the very beginning, we thought it was Star Advantage to bring the community in, because we didn't want it to just be something that the Housing Authority and the school co-authored. We wanted it to be something that the community owned. And that just took sending out emails, setting up meetings. I mean, we went to points where we would have 30 people in a room, down to points where we would have 4 or 5 people. But at the end of the day, everyone understood how important it was to use attendance as a guide to support education, to ultimately help kids move out of poverty. I'm not sure about some of your communities, those of you on the line, but we have a generational concern of the same families, generation after generation, not being able to break the cycle of poverty. And one of the connecting points to that inability to break that cycle has been education.
Thank you very much. We've got a couple questions in the public chat. One from Jan, who is asking a bit more about how you get the data from these schools, and does the program require that the families provide authorizations, or how does that work?
Yes, so we do have a release of information form in order for us to get records from the school. The only records we're interested in are attendance. And this will be actually our first year where we are reporting to the county, because we have we won an award grant for the Truancy Prevention Initiative, and we are have to report on best practices and outcomes. So you saw 5 of our objectives up there. But I think that right now, this has been a 2-year process. We started around 2013. We're 2015, and we have approximately, I would say, 30 to 40% of the school population participates. Since we have the parent chaperones walking to school every day, definitely after the school rally, it's definitely increased participation, because the parents and they're less fearful, more trusting of what our intent is, and it's a good intent to wish that our outcomes for our children improve in terms of them getting to school, getting a good nutrition, having extracurricular activities, getting the opportunity to participate in the library and reading groups, and going to school to learn, you know.
And we got that 30% or so through, we did raffles, we did door-to-door. There's apprehension, you know, the notion of, if I allow you to get into this part of my life, what are you going to do? The information around attendance is only viewed by one person in the housing authority, and that's Bernadette. You know, so we keep it separate from the management piece. We like to clearly have a higher rate of participation, and we'll continue to work on that as we continue to build trust and support from parents. And I was at the school this morning, and the principal was sharing with me that we have on average about 35, 40 kids a day that are participating in the walking school bus. And that's clearly we're still early in the school year, but it's a huge difference between this time last year and now, because folks are getting involved. And again, we just see it as a collaborative effort to build trust, and ultimately we love to be at that place where 100% of our families are participating, and we're seeing the outcomes that we're hoping to see.
Thank you very much. And I think that there was a further question around that trust, as far as that Rachel put out there, that what did the community outreach look like, and what message did you find resonated with residents and community that got them engaged on education issues?
Well, you know, that trust and that engagement we're finding is oftentimes better built by converts. You know, people that weren't doing really well. There's a young lady in our development who's really, really struggled. You know, she's 30 years old. She has 6 children. She has a hard time getting them to school. There are other issues that she had, and we address those issues, and we're trying to use her as a spokesperson. You know, we did learn that having a Lewis and Bernadette stand up and talk at people wasn't necessarily the way to go. So we try and get people who were cynical and really didn't buy into the program. As we see them moving towards, you know, that center point, we try and enroll them and empower them, give them opportunities to, you know, talk to other parents and things of that nature. We have a wonderful community school, and that's the school has been supportive in trying to hire as many of our residents as they can, so that those residents can model behaviors. A big part of the policy, if you recall, we talked about attendance and then barriers. We really, really take a close look at those barriers, and not us, but using service providers in the community to address those barriers. And people say, wow, I have these issues, and the last thing the housing authority thought about was throwing me out. They didn't get in my business by, you know, examining what was wrong, but we were successful in connecting people to services. It's an everyday process that, you know, you have to continue to work.
Thank you. And I guess the final sort of question on this area, outside of your resources of data and your work on this effort, what are the incentives that you provide, and are there any other support resources? You mentioned briefly like a support vehicle, so if you can speak more as to what are the other pieces of your program that provide supports?
Well, the support vehicle, we partner with one of our community-based organizations. And they're intended to be the process whereby if a kid isn't in school, we call the parent, or the school calls the parent and say your kid isn't here, and that vehicle is intended to go back and pick the kid up so that he or she won't lose as much instructional time. And so that's what that van does. It'll ride through the community. We don't want people to become dependent on the van. You know, okay, I'll just hang back and the van will pick me up, particularly when the weather, starts, the rain starts to come. And then in just other incentives, we have gift cards we've bought. We've reached out. I remember doing a presentation for our local Lions Club, and they wrote us a check. Just things that we can do to get people in the way, to get people comfortable with having education being at the top of the list, and getting kids in school. And let the truth be known, that's a part of our program that we hope we can phase out, because none of us get trophies or awards for being good parents and making sure our children go to school. And we don't want to set that mindset, but we want to do things to just kind of get people encouraged. And over time, we're hoping that, the particularly monetary incentives will go away. The culture and the community would change to such that learning spirit is here.
Thank you both so much for your time and detail in providing all that information to us. It's incredibly helpful, as I know for me as we start to think about those addendums in that process, to hear from you all. So thank you so much. And we are going to switch over now. Hopefully we have Ted on the line. Ted, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We sure can. Fantastic. So
all right.
Take it away.
All right. Just to start, just kind of preface, we're pretty early still in this, hence the word possible on the title slide here. There's multiple kind of moving pieces that we're working on here at CLPHA around this. I won't go so much into the kind of the program system piece to support students, but I will say there's a lot of the same elements that we just heard from the previous presentation. So a lot of those strategies we're also looking at in a possible rollout for a system. So can I control the slides, or do you have to do that?
You should be able to.
Okay, great. So first off, one thing that we've done here at CLPHA is, so since I've been on staff for a year and coming from the outside sector in schools as a former school principal, we've worked on what are our key attendance messages that we have here at the Housing Authority, so that organizationally, everyone has the same foundational kind of core principles and understanding around the importance of attendance and why the Housing Authority cares about school attendance, and now also communicating these with all of the various stakeholders and partners that we have. And again, it's just trying to create some continuity and common messages. And so what we've kind of landed on here we believe that reducing absences is an anti-poverty strategy, making our community safer. We know data shows us that, students with a high school diploma earns $10,000 less a year than a graduate and $35,000 less than a bachelor's degree. So, kind of for that workforce development aspect, why are housing authorities care about school attendance? Well, if they're not in school, they're not getting degrees, and they're not making that money. And then the other core value is that CLPHA is a support for all families to get children to school. And the kind of tagline that we've adopted here is in school on time every day. And also a message around that attendance in school matters starting in preschool. And also this one around all absences counting, excused or unexcused. And that's larger than just low-income families. Having worked in schools, I think that that's a common misconception among everybody, right? That if it's an excused absence, well, it's okay. Well, not really. I mean, if you're not in school, you're not in school, so you're missing that instructional time. So this is kind of the foundation. This is where all the future work that we will do around attendance comes from through these values and these common messages. So why are we interested in adding a lease addendum regarding school attendance? We deeply believe that ensuring children get to school each day is one of the most important things that a family can do. And it's also trying to create a tool that will generate awareness around the topic of school attendance with families and partners. So being intentional and actually calling it out in a lease, provides that opportunity to create awareness around the topic. It's also by having that in our lease, it is a catalyst for us to create that system similar to what we just heard, and that program similar to what we just heard, that would support families. And also it's a tool to support our families and our staff and our partners to ensure that students are in school each day. So what I hear sometimes, we have so a regional houser, we have on-site youth providers at 16 different sites across King County, and a recurring theme that we hear from all of those different providers is that often there's like one or two kids that everyone who works on that property or who lives on that property knows, is not going to school. And they might be a high schooler, and the family is feeling like they don't know what to do with the kid. The youth providers who are on staff, they don't know what they can do with the kid. The housing authority doesn't really have anything, that we can do. So by putting it into the lease, we're hoping that, it again creates a tool and a process for all of those various stakeholders to support families and get kids to school every day. So that's why we're interested in it. So this gets down to some of the nitty-gritty in terms of the specific language that we're looking at, and I want to preface that this is still a draft, very, very much a draft. We're going through a pretty rigorous process here, vetting all of the language and kind of having those same types of community meetings that was referenced in the earlier presentation. So this is very much a draft, but it's where we're at, and so you can kind of read it there for yourself. But basically, we're citing a Washington state law regarding mandatory school attendance for school-aged children. And this would be under the termination of lease clause, so a good cause for termination of lease. And then again, this is a second portion of the lease where we also would cite the responsibility to send school-aged children to school, and again, we cite the Washington state law. And then we also crafted the statement that is actually in the lease. And it hits on why school attendance matters. We wanted, when people are looking at this, the thought was if we're putting it in the lease, we want people to understand why we're asking them to do that. And so what we come up with is, why school attendance matters. Very simply, it's the law. And in addition, research shows, the chronic absence, missing 10 or more days as early as pre-kindergarten is associated with poor reading skills and retention in 3rd grade, and then you guys can kind of read the rest there. And then the other piece that is in it's kind of a text box where it sits in the lease, but we also say to contact your school or our resident services department for support in getting children to school each day. Again, like we heard earlier, we want to be a system of support for our families, and we're not trying to get after people, or I do not ever foresee us, even if this were to be implemented, I don't think we would ever kick anybody out of housing for school attendance. That doesn't do anybody any good. However, it does provide us an opportunity to come alongside families and support them. And so we want families to know that we are here for them to, assist in getting their kids to school each day on time. In addition, we are exploring language that would go into the Statement of Family Responsibilities for our Housing Choice Voucher households, and that language is still kind of up in the air, but it would again, complement and mirror the public housing lease language. So we are looking at having that similar language in both public housing and housing choice vouchers. It's just how we talk about it in terms of the responsibilities is a little different. So what has led us to this specific language? One is that we have a state law around attendance, and so we reference that. A lot of many of the specific words that we use are pulled directly from the law. So we relied heavily on that. And then we also worked with our school district partners and community-based organizations that we meet with regularly to kind of vet this language. And that's actually still an ongoing process. And we've had multiple meetings, and I was just kind of nodding as I was listening to the other presentation about how long this process takes and how many meetings you do have to have it be a really true collaborative process where all of your stakeholders are buying into it and supporting the work moving forward. And so, there's just been multiple meetings with KCHA leadership to discuss the language used. So I'll just go ahead and switch to the next slide. So our timeline for implementation, this has been, ongoing at KCHA for over a year. So this conversation, I've been at the agency just over a year now, and this conversation was already happening when I came on board, but I needed a lot of time to kind of just figure out the landscape a little bit before I was ready to move forward. So the last 3 months have actually been a frenzy of work, and we're hoping to wrap things up pretty soon. But it's obviously a very time-consuming process because even internally there's various departments who have a stake at what is in the lease. So even inside the own agency, there's a lot of cross-sector collaboration that needs to happen in addition to the outside collaboration. Our goal is to kind of have the language finalized and hopefully have any addendums in place by the end of 2015. So we're kind of giving ourselves a goal to have this kind of wrapped up by the end of the year. We are exploring the recertification process as the means for implementation. So, but there's a few different levels to that as well that we're trying to sift through. So this was actually one thing I kind of wanted to throw out to the group, and I don't know if people actually have answers to some of these questions. That would actually be really helpful. we try to work really closely with our school district's attorneys so that, KCHA isn't necessarily having to incur, the costs for those consultations. But we're finding that it's having limitations just in terms of being able to have access to the school district's attorneys and everything. So we have identified some kind of key questions that we're trying to answer. And like I said, if you guys have these, and that would be great. But the whole premise is kind of based on if housing authorities or KCHA in any way, shape, or form can require some sort of proof from a family that their children are enrolled in school. And then you can see kind of the subsequent questions based on that. Obviously, it's academic data, so it's protected by FERPA, so we're in the same boat as Marin County there with, having families sign informed consent and allowing us to partner with them and to support them. So these are, like I said, these are the questions that we're kind of throwing back and forth inside the agency right now and trying to work, again, with our school districts to see if we can get some answers, and then we'll have our own consultation with attorneys as well once we feel like we have a little better grasp on the issue. So in regards to response from residents, so responses have been mixed. There were 2 meetings very early in the spring, or late spring or early summer, where we, with our 2 resident advisory councils, the possible lease changes were brought up as a point of conversation. And I was at both of those meetings to be able to listen and kind of respond. And it was interesting. I would say overwhelmingly the residents agreed that school attendance is important. And I think that putting in a lease will force families to follow the state law. However, at the same time, these exact same residents are really hesitant to tie school attendance to a lease because of the various, extenuating circumstances that often surround school attendance issues. So they were really concerned about that. There were some people that had very personal stories about, their adolescent children, that just were going to do what they were going to do, and so they were sharing, so you would kick a family out because of the problems that their teen is causing and things like that. So, so one thing that we are kind of exploring is, adding a step to the process that would allow families to be exempt from any possible eviction if they signed something or stated something that they would collaborate with KCHA and their local school districts to resolve any attendance concerns. So we're hoping that, kind of putting that in there as an out for families that, again, we are here to assist you and to partner with you, and as long as you are working with us and trying to resolve the issue, you'll be in good standing. Obviously, none of this is an official decision yet. We have ongoing processes and conversations in place, and we'll have public meetings would be held once final decisions are made. So in terms of tracking success, we're working with school district partners and directly with Attendance Works to kind of work through this process with us and to determine how we might best evaluate the impact of such processes. And then in addition, currently right now, we're participating in the Attendance Awareness Month, and we're working with a handful of schools to monitor attendance rates, and we're going to kind of compare 2014, when there was no coordinated effort with school districts around the campaign, compared to this year where we have had coordinated partnerships with 3 school districts to roll out an attendance awareness campaign kind of as the foundational piece for our attendance work. And this slide is just very kind of simply shows the layout of the campaign, so kind of where we are, you know, kind of what we're using where. So you can see we're doing things here inside of our central office as well as at our schools. We had teachers distribute things. We had mailers go home. We had, you know, things put up in the local communities around the community. So, you know, the pizza shop across the street and the coffee shop across the street, things like that, they put up posters, so they're kind of part of the campaign at our public housing and then at our public housing site. So this just kind of gives you a picture for kind of what our campaign looks like, and we're, again, this campaign is only at 3 of our school district partners. So there's 19 school districts as part of King County Housing Authority, which is another layer to our challenge around school attendance. You know, how do you create a system and a process that's standalone, that doesn't rely on MOUs and DSAs and things like that in place with every district. So that's kind of a challenge, but we're using this September as a pilot, and we're going to do some evaluation and get some feedback from all of our community partners around how the campaign went and how the tools were used and how they might be improved on. And then we're also going to roll out this campaign across all of our family sites across King County, which I've heard is like 60-something sites. And the goal is by next September, we're completely rolled out so that everyone can participate in 2016. So I think that's all I have.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing the process that you've gone through and where you're at currently and where the plans are. You also did a really excellent job of answering people's questions before before they knew they had them in your slides. So it looks like that you were able to respond to Ken's question about bringing resident input into the discussion, and also Rachel's information. She was just inquiring about how else it was being rolled out across those areas. If you want to speak to those points further, that's great. Also, Jennifer did ask, which I think is another great question, is how you deal or what your thoughts are in terms of students with mental health issues that could, students or parents that could have mental health issues that could impact their involvement. So if a parent is mentally ill or having difficulty supporting their child, are there services provided? I think it also goes both for parents but also for youth that are experiencing trauma, that they're, how is that being factored into sort of the attendance equation from your program?
I think it's absolutely something we're going to have to consider when we're kind of building the system of supports. So I have a rough kind of idea of what that system looks like, and it was still too early to kind of share with this group, but I would envision that there are 3 tiers of intervention that we're utilizing with families. And this awareness campaign is kind of the bottom tier, the foundational piece that's good for everybody. And then we would have different interventions for kind of the middle of the road folks, and then complementing and supplementing interventions for those people that are at the top of the intervention pyramid, which is a pretty small percentage, 2 to 4 to 5% of our entire population, where I think those families experiencing mental illness would fall into place. So the idea is that, yes, we would have kind of a specific process put in place so that we could partner with those families and link them to supporting services if, kind of the root cause of some of these issues are around mental illness.
Great, thank you. I think Rachel also just provided another couple questions. Are you working in collaboration with other jurisdictional partners outside of the school? And if you have developed your materials with supports from Attendance Works. I additionally will add to that, is there what have the supports from Attendance Works been like for you so far?
Yeah, so we are working with King County Prosecutor's Office, who they kind of have a division around school truancy, and they're actually doing a lot of work in this area. So we are partnering with them and including them in a lot of the meetings so that we can kind of utilize all the work that they've done, and they can kind of be aware of what we're doing, so they might have some ideas about how to plug in. So we are doing that. And then in terms of the materials developed, you know, we I wouldn't say we've developed anything with support from Attendance Works. I think, you know, we just have used everything that they have available on their website. So we went through during the spring and did, you know, spent almost 3 hours just digging through the website and saving all the PDFs and everything, and because they have so much on there that you don't even realize unless you just invest some time digging into. And so we just, you know, so we just used what they had existing. The support from Attendance Works is right now, we're really trying just partnering with them as a thought partner, because we're struggling with how we do this as a regional housing authority. If we were a housing authority with one municipality and only one school district, it's daunting enough. It's enough of a challenge, as I think, you know, the previous group could share. But how the heck do you do this on a level with, you know, 17 to 19 different school districts with, you know, 18,000 kids and all that? So they're just kind of helping us be as thought partners in that part.
Great. Thank you so much. I think Rachel had one last question. We are kind of coming up on time. So the materials you found on Attendance Works, you just kind of used them as is, or were you able to modify them?
Yeah, both logos are on there. So, you know, it says Attendance Works, but then we also just copied our logo onto it.
And I'll just add really quickly that I'm happy to provide anyone connection information to Attendance Works if you would like to, if you haven't already been in touch with them and you'd like to. And I'm sure that both Ted and Bernadette would also be happy to talk more. And if you have possible answers to Ted's legal questions, I'm sure he would love to hear from you as well. So please do let Cassie or I know if you need any email addresses or other contact information.
Yeah, if you have answers to those questions, that would be great. I think I heard one in the previous conversation maybe, so.
Well, thank you both so much to all our presenters today, for Bernadette, Lewis, and Ted for contributing to the conversation of attendance and lease addendums. I think this is really helpful, and we may be seeing this again as a roundtable discussion. Definitely seems like it's got a lot of layers to it, and it sounds like it's of interest to a lot of individuals. So thank you all so much. Abra, did you have any final?
Nope, that's it. Thanks so much, Cassie. Thank you to our presenters, and thank you to everyone for joining us. As I said, in a couple of days, I'll send out a follow-up email with the ways to access this recording, and the presentations will be up in the Google Drive.
Great. Thank you all so much.